Abu Tariq, he left?
Yes.
He made it okay? It's too much. No time. What's his name again? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi. And then after this, Ikhwani, I want to continue to make some points as we said earlier today. First point that I want to make is a pretty important point, I think, connecting it and all of the dots. The actual phrase in that book of Shakespeare and the statement that is well known, the precise one, is that they said, or he said in that book, in all of that, arose by any other name could smell as sweet. Arose by any other name could smell as sweet. The meaning of that, and I had mentioned that it was an Islamic principle when people say that, him writing about that, is that the meaning of that is the inherent nature of a thing is not changed by its name. The inherent thing of something, if you give it a different name, it doesn't change it. So a rose by any other name could smell as sweet. And it was said because the person was saying, you're just giving me kalam, that's all. You're just giving me kalam. And the fact that this kalam that you're saying, it is not matching what you're supposed to be doing. But anyway, it's an Islamic understanding, because we know that our Nabi and our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us and prophesied about the end of time that people from this community are going to drink khamr, intoxicants, and they're going to call it by other than its name. The fact that they call or they do that, it doesn't change the reality of the ruling of what they did. And that is a lot, not just with khamr. Like right now, we'll have Muslims saying that there was a push that they make for women's liberation. It's not women's liberation. You can call it that, but the tahrir, or freeing and liberating the woman, in reality is really making her a slave the way these people are thinking, that she could do whatever she wants and she could be equal with a man. So you can call the thing whatever you want. And there are a lot of things that the Muslims do, and the non-Muslims, the Westerners as well as the non-Muslims, which is changing the complexion of the deen. Like this issue of the tajdeed in al-Islam, that some people have an opinion of a mujaddid, a person who is renewing the religion, and he comes with new ideas. Like this idea that we're brothers to Christians and Jews. The Quran was revealed by Allah, the Torah, the Injil, all three of those books were brought by prophet and messengers that we all believe, we all accepted them. Salawatullahi wassalamu alayhim ajma'in. And so therefore this new concept of the Abrahamic faiths, and we have to come together, we have to acknowledge that. That's the tajdeed of the religion, or the renewal of the religion, that is not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are a lot of things. But I just wanted to be sure to give the exact statement in English for the amana al-ilmiya. The second thing connected to that is what we just did. You brothers helped me, and I appreciate that. Is this issue of why would we mention something that a non-Muslim, who was Shakespeare, he's a well-known adib in English, why are you going to mention that in the khutbah? That's what people say. That's how people think. Why would you mention him in the khutbah as if we're raising him? We're not raising Shakespeare, and that's not the point. The point is, this is a famous statement. Whether Shakespeare made it or someone else made it is irrelevant. The point is that there are words and ideas and concepts and wisdoms that people say that because they're not Muslims, we don't reject that. And that's indicative of what we just found concerning the statement and the issue that's collected by Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, as our brother Farazan found it in English, and then it was translated, ala kullu shay'in ma khala Allah batilun, which means everything other than Allah is falsehood. Everything other than Allah is falsehood. It's not true. And then there's some more that comes with the poetry. But we're just mentioning this part because we didn't translate. We're not going to go through all of that. But the shahid from the kalam is that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam took a statement from someone from Jahiliyyah who was a popular poet, and he said that man spoke the truth when he said this poetry. He said that the asdaq, the most truthful thing that any poet said in Jahiliyyah, was this line of poetry. And no one is going to say he's a non-Muslim and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is raising him up. No, they're not going to say that. What he said is the point. So as we were trying to get the point across today about the words that people say, what's in a name, what Shakespeare said, what he wrote, what's in a name. And that was the point we were trying to prove. Last thing for this, before I move on, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, and I think we should be aware of this, is what we mentioned as well earlier today, about this thing where the newspapers and the media, they're saying this thing about the hostages and the prisoners. Was that point understood by you brothers? That point was understood? The Israelis are hostages, which has a nur of rahmah and ra'fa, and like they're hostages. They've been taken away and oppressed. But when it comes, although their numbers are a lot less, whereas the Palestinians, their numbers are much more greater, but they're called prisoners. But this is what I wanted to mention. When they let those Israeli hostages out recently, a few of them came forward publicly and they praised how they were held in captivity. They didn't like being held in captivity for 2 years, and they didn't deserve to be held in captivity for 2 years. But they were praising how they were treated as captives. The media will never tell you that. But the Palestinians who came out, they were held for longer. And when they came out, they talked about how they were not fed, they were malnutrition, people were raped, people were killed. They had to deal with a bunch of horrors. You're not going to see that, and you're not going to hear that. So the point of all of that is, especially during this time, one of the things about this problem in Gaza is that I believe it has taken the curtains off of the eyes of the world as it relates to the reality of the media and how they totally, absolutely change things to fit the agenda that they want. I think everybody knew that for a long time, but it's even more blatant now, and it's more clear now to degrees that it's unimaginable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just as important. I wanted to mention this, and that is about dealing with complicated and complex subjects on the minbar. Dealing with complicated and complex subjects on the minbar. As I mentioned before, in our masjid, my responsibility first and foremost in teaching and dawah is to this community, first and foremost. But this is not the only community I'm giving dawah to. This is not the only community that are listening to my voice and my ideas. I mentioned that a number of times because I think sometimes someone may say, why are you talking about that? Because there are people who are behind me for many, many years who are listening to what I'm saying, and they're getting instructions. So I think about that. I have a responsibility to them. I don't want to say it's secondary, but I will say it's secondary because this is where I'm living and this is my community. This is where I am. I have to pay attention to what's going on right here. So if a person is being a khatib and he's talking to people And his kalam is on the moon. He's talking about things on the moon, the craters on the moon, and how far the moon is from what, and what comet passed the moon. And the people right here on planet Earth, we're going to say, what are you talking about? And I've seen that. I've seen people give khutbas that were written, and they were from Baghdad many, many years ago, and they didn't even have the intellect to change the names. And they would still say, the Khalifa Harun al-Rashid is doing this and doing that. And they didn't even have that kind. You say, what are you doing? So my point is, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnah is, he talked about a gamut of things, a lot of things. And sometimes those things were complicated and complex, and they were sensitive. What's more sensitive than sex? Sex. And there are a lot of things, not the only thing, sex. So I've been in communities where I made a mistake of mentioning things that community was not ready for, and I felt it was nifaq on the part of the community. But the mistake was mine too, because you can't be tone deaf. So this issue of the N-word, which I'm not going to use again, the N-word, for an example. Someone sitting in the audience, an Arab person, anyone, one of the elders, they hear that word being mentioned, they say, what? You said that word from the minbar? They're shocked. Although the word is all over, it's everywhere, it's in your house. It's in the house of the person who's shocked. But I have to be sensitive because that happened before. I mentioned a hadith that the Prophet mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right here when I was in al-istiqamah. I gave a khutbah at a masjid, and that masjid wasn't very fond of our dawah. And in that khutbah, I mentioned that hadith. That went over okay, the people understood it. But some of the people in that masjid made trouble. And although some of the people who had a problem with the word, they have stores that sell sex magazines. Some of the people had a problem. They have stores that sell pornographic magazines. I don't think there's anybody in this masjid, and Allah knows best, except that they have access on their TV or on their mobile to pornography. Children have access, daughters have access to pornography. But when you mention this word, the N-word here, your children are listening to it day in and day out, and they memorize those things. So I'm not going to mention the N-word again. And I thought long and hard before the khutbah, should I mention the N-word? But because we have a lot of people who English is not their first language, if I just made reference to the N-word, maybe they would think I was talking about something else. So I said the N-word. I want to ask you guys, do you guys think that was offensive when you heard it? So anyway, look at the complexity of this. Look at the complexity. And we mentioned this hadith here a few times before. Our Nabi al-Mustafa, who was a rahmah and who was intelligent and he knew how to deal with people. He wasn't fahish, and he wasn't a man who was mutafahish. He didn't say lewd things that were inappropriate. He said, if any of you sees a man bragging about his lineage and where he comes from, then let him bite on his father's private part and don't sugarcoat it. But he didn't say private part. He said, وَلَا تُكَنُّوا, don't make a kinaya. If any of you see a man bragging about where he comes from, he's an Arab or whatever his thing is, he said, when you see that, tell him to bite on his father's penis and don't sugarcoat it. Say it directly. So one of the companions saw that happening. He heard a man doing that. And that companion said to that man, bite on your father's penis. The people sitting there were shocked that companion would say that in an audience like that in public. He said, do you people find it strange what I said? And then he told them the hadith. The Nabi said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الرَّجُلَ يَتَعَزَّى بِعَزَاءِ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ If you see a man talking about proud, being proud like they did in times of Jahiliyyah, tell him to bite on his father's penis and do not sugarcoat it. What does that mean? It was the Prophet's way of saying you have no right to see yourself as being better than other people because of where you come from, because that's where you come from. And that's nothing to be proud about in the way that you're doing it. So that's a complex way in which he dealt with an issue, and he did with it a methodology that matched what was going on. And there are a lot of things like that. Some that I won't even mention. Because if we open up the door to those kinds of things, it'd be a shubha for people. Rasulullah said that? Yes, he said that. Did he say that about the idols of Jahiliyyah? He said that? You'll be shocked if you never heard it. But there are some people who you can hear it, and as long as it is established, they don't have any problem. Because it's authentic. It can be shocking, and the person is going to accept it. Because once he hears this thing is an authentic hadith, he's a Muslim, mustaslim. He just submit. And then there are the other people, some people, they're just not going to accept it. Although, as it relates to the way we're dealing with things, the people are involved in things like that. So there are quite a few. People were sitting there, he asked those people, and then we move on after this, inshaAllah. He was sitting, he asked those people, it may be that some of you men sit with each other and you trade notes and you talk about the private things that you do with your wives. And it may be that some of you women do the same thing. The people put their heads down and nobody said anything. One of the companions said, yes, Rasulullah, the men do that amongst themselves and some of the women do that amongst themselves. And if the companions did this, may Allah be pleased with them, or some of them, you can rest assured people do that right now. Right now. Tell people about the private, personal details of what they do with their partner, their husband or their wife. He told them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't do that. Don't do that. For verily the example of the one who does that is like the example of a male shaitan who meets a female shaitan in the middle of the street, and they come together for people to look at it. So the image of that and the optic of that, you can see it. It wasn't Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being lewd. He's addressing the mentality of what was going on to teach this point. And there are many things, and like I said, there are some things I'm not going to mention because mentioning a lot of those things will be a problem. It cause a problem. And plus, the Salaf used to say to their students, to each other, if they found people talking about women and the beauty of women and this and that, they used to tell them, get out of our majlis if that's what you want to talk about. You want to talk about the mahasin of the women? This is not the place to do that. Get out of our majlis. Like that man who told one of the companions, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes for jihad and he conquers those people, the mukhannif man, the mukhannif, he's like the eunuch. He told one of the men from the mujahideen, when you go and you conquer that place, he said, make sure you make it your business to go and capture such and such a man's daughter. And he started to describe how voluptuous that lady was. Prophet Muhammad heard that, and he was coming in. He told them, get this man out of my house and don't let him in my house anymore. Because that kind of kalam is not appropriate, and the person who talks like that shouldn't be entertained. There's a place and a time and a way to deal with that issue. So that was the next point, because as I mentioned, some people, they make inkar about, why are you talking about that? I'm talking about that because I was offended. I was offended that although that student, it was not his niyat to be disrespectful, for Muslim children to walk around saying this is not acceptable. Not acceptable. So it's something that is prevalent. Wherever you go and there's a masjid, wherever you go and there's a madrasa, wherever you go and there are youth events, you go camping, the Muslims are going to say this. So on our basketball court, all you have to do is stand out there and just watch them play basketball, and they cannot stop it. They can't stop it. Although you're standing there trying to tell them, don't stop, they do it because they can't help it. Now they're struggling, inshallah, to deal with it. And when we dealt with it in the class and we talked to them, some of them couldn't stop laughing. No, not you. You didn't. Some of them couldn't stop laughing. And today when we mentioned in the khutbah, I was looking around and people were laughing because you say that word. So it is funny, but at the same time, it's not right. So I find that it was no better place to deal with that and to say it other than today. The other issue, and this is important as well, because I don't think that this came across very clear. And I wanted it to be clear for those brothers who I respect. I saw a few brothers, some I know, some I don't know. And they were very adamant and very passionate that because of our unique experience, and sometimes brothers don't understand when they speak to some African-American brothers exactly where they're coming from. And you have extremes. I know some African-American brothers who are extremely sensitive, and they believe that our plight and our problem is the biggest one in the whole wide world. And that's not true. It's not true. That is not true. No matter what your struggle is, no matter what happened to you and your family, no matter what happened to you as an Arab or whatever, the African-American experience is the worst one known to mankind. And that's not true. That's not true. So when you're talking, a person can come across like that and you don't understand that. You know, where's he coming from? It's just he's passionate about that. And that's why I'm dealing with this issue as well, especially this point. So some of those brothers, one in particular, he kept saying, he kept repeating, and he was very forceful and very passionate. And he was saying that he doesn't care what anybody says. Only we should be allowed to say that word to each other. Only us. Anybody else says that word to us, then if he were to get, attacked or something, then it's okay. I say, where you get that from? I understand what you're saying. It was a negative word that was used against us. It means you're dark from the Latin word negro or negra, Latino, negra, which means black, negro, black. They took that word and they turned it into the N word to be a derogatory word, that you're lazy, you're black, you're shiftless, you're no good, and you don't have any rights. You can be killed, your limbs can be cut off, your women can be taken, your children can be taken, sold, you never see them again, your mother. It was a terrible situation. Terrible situation. And that word, along with that experience, was a big issue. So those people came, and some of the comedians in the past, I'm not going to mention those comedians, but some of the famous, most funniest comedians from our culture in the 70s, early 70s, they started saying this word. And it became normal and acceptable. As time went on, it got worse and worse and worse. And now it is normal. To the degree and the point, if you're in a public school and the teacher said to a student who was talking and they used that word against them, probably nothing's going to happen to the teacher. Nothing's going to happen to the teacher. About a week ago, there was a teacher who had a little African-American girl, and the people sang happy birthday to the little girl because it was the birthday, the well-known happy birthday song. I don't have to sing, everybody knows. The whole class sung the normal happy birthday song. The white teacher said, I want you now to listen to my version of the happy birthday song. So she said the song, da-da-dun-dun-dun-dun, da-da-dun-dun-dun-dun. And she changed the words. She said, happy birthday to you. You a little monkey that lives in the zoo. And she said things like that. Called the little black girl a monkey that lives in a zoo. The mother the kid went and told the mother what happened. No, the mother sent the recording. The teacher sent the recording to the mother. The mother came to the school, made a big issue. Why was it a big issue to the mother? Because the teacher called the black girl a monkey. So they have in the Republican Party right now, where they found their text, and this is how they talk. African Americans are gorillas and monkeys that belong in a zoo. It's a racist concept. Although that thing with the little girl, I don't know if the teacher was really intending that, because she sent it to the teacher, to the mother, and I don't think she really intended that. And some people did say those kind of songs a long time ago. Did you people hear about that? You heard about that. It was very popular, very popular. But the teacher should have been sensitive to, don't put monkey, gorilla, ape with an African American, because it's from the racist terms that far right people use here. Now, I got to mention this because it's true. Just as it's not permissible we shouldn't use these kind of terms, also African Americans should not use derogatory terms for other people. Hispanics, they used to call them when I was young spics. I don't know if they still say that. But right now, they call them Chicos. You can't call people Chicos. That's offensive. Chico, that's offensive. Italians have names for people. People have names for Italians. Everybody had it. Over in the UK, Pakistani people, if you're black, if you're of color, you're dark, they'll call you a khal. A khal is the black mole. So because the mole is black, they'll call you that as a derogatory word. Sheikh Abul Harith said that Arabs say that as well. I didn't know that. You aware of that? You aware of that, Abu Anas? I never heard that. But because a mole is black, they'll call you khal, like a mole on the face. So I don't care who the people are. As Muslims, this is from the da'wah of al-Jahiliyyah. So it's people in Jahiliyyah. That's why the Prophet said to Abu Dharr al-Ghafari in today's Khutba, "Innakum ri'un fika jahiliyyah." You saying that man, mother, son of a black woman, you a person, you have Jahiliyyah in you. That's what the people of Jahiliyyah do. And everybody has it. Every group of people have it. Everybody. And Islam came to rectify that problem. And it's one of the main reasons why I was interested in Islam, because the religion of Islam addressed the issue. Do we have Muslims who are racist? Absolutely, absolutely. But our religion doesn't support that. So back to the point, and we'll be finished. I have to make this point clear, because I don't think it was clear. The people who say, we African-American black people, we're the only ones who call each other the N-word. It's only for us. No one else should be allowed. I said, no, you can't do that. I don't agree with that. Where do you get that from? Because there are ayat of the Quran and a hadith and a concept in Islam that pushes that away. And that's the statement in Surah Al-An'am. I don't think I translated it in the best way. The non-Muslims of Quraysh used to do a lot of things to show the tafriqah between the people, to show he's better, this tribe is better, this person is better. They used to do a lot of things. One of the things they used to do was they used to do a tafriq. What is that again? They would distinguish things. So if you can imagine a corral, a big pasture of camels, they would designate some camels and they would say, everybody in this masjid, you can't eat from these camels that are over here. You can't eat. It's not permissible for you. You can't eat. These camels are only for this one and this one and that one and that one and that one, and that's it. So Allah revealed that ayat, and they say, these cattle and this harf. Harf is like vegetation. What do you say, huh? Crops. Yeah, that's it. وَقَالُوا هَذِي أَنْعَامٌ وَحَرْثٌ حِجْرٌ. These cattle and these crops should be avoided. Nobody touch it. Nobody. لَا يَطْعُمُهَا إِلَّا مَن نَشَاءُ بِزَعْمِهِمْ. No one should eat it except those who we allow. That was a practice of theirs. So they were dealt with because Allah said, where do you get that from? How do you do that? In our religion, everything is for everybody, or everything is not for everybody unless there is a proof. The second ayat, ayat number 139, the second ayat of that, he mentioned that they said, وَقَالُوا. Should we make the adhan now? All right. Just let me finish this last point. 1 minute. It won't take long. وقالوا ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا ومحرم على أزواجنا. They said, what is in the stomachs, the unborn babies, the unborn calves that are in the stomach of these cows or these camels, they said they are only for the men only. So these cows, these camels, they were pregnant. What's in their stomachs when it comes out is only for us. And our wives and the women, they can't have it. But if those things died, those babies died in the stomach, then the women can also eat it with us. So Allah made inkar on that and showed them you can't do that in our religion. Prophet Muhammad mentioned, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anyone, everyone who faces the Qibla, who prays our salat, who eats what we eat, he's a Muslim. What the Muslims can do, he can do. And what he can do, they can do. There's no distinction. There's no distinction. And there are a lot of dalil for that, a lot of dalil. I gave a khutbah one time about Hani, when Hani gave protection to the man in Mecca because she respected him. And she said, I won't let anybody harm you. You have my protection. Her brother Ali bin Abi Talib said, her nephew Ali bin Abi Talib, her brother Ali said, I'm not respecting that. I'm not respecting you gave as a woman protection to him. He's an enemy of Islam and he did a lot of bad things. Ali said, I'm going to deal with him. She went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, told him what Ali said. Because she was a woman, he was putting her down. We don't care what you say. Rasulullah came out to the people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He told the people that I will protect whoever Hani protects. Showing, although she's a woman, she gave her protection. So he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the believers, al-mu'minun tatakafu dima'um. The believers, their blood is equal. Their blood is equal. Whenever there's an agreement with one of them, everybody has to take care of that agreement. And you can't say, well, we're all the people of Florida, Kissimmee, and this other person comes from Montana. We're not going to respect whatever he wants, his feelings. We're not going to do that. So similar to that, if you're going to say that only African Americans are allowed to do something, where'd you get that from? Where does that come from? We don't do that in Islam. Where do you get that from? Anybody, you can't do that. Normally. Now, does that mean that people come and say, if you're under 18, you can't drive? And now we say, why they do that? That's a different issue altogether. That's a different issue altogether. But generally speaking, if it's allowed for you to say it, it should be allowed for everybody else to say it. And that's why we flipped the other thing about what the old man was saying, when in his culture, they were calling people of color by that term, which is negative, the slaves. But he didn't, and they don't mean it like, I'm sure there's some people who mean it like that, but he didn't mean it like that. And I vouch for him. Someone told me that where they come from, if a person's name, his son is Abdullah, they will call him, instead of call him Abu Abdullah, they'll call him Abu Abd. Abu Abd. The boy's name is Abdullah, but the culture, they call him Abu Abd. They don't mean Abd, the slave, like the slave in bondage. They don't mean it like that. That's from the Qara'in to show he didn't mean it. And I knew that person who said it. So if you believe this is something that only African Americans can say, this N-word, all right, no problem. He should be allowed to also continue to say what he's saying, although you may find it disrespectful. But you're going to say, no, we don't want you using that word. And there are people, even African Americans like myself, who say, no, we shouldn't use that word anymore. We should stop using that word. It's not a good word, in my opinion. And saying that, I do understand what some of our brothers and some what the people are saying, what they feel, but we are people who have to bring proofs for what we're saying. You can't just tell me, I don't care what you think. I don't care who disagrees. You can't say that. Where is it in the religion that you can pull and extract an ayat or a hadith that would allow you to be upon that? And Allah knows best, and He is A'la and A'lam. After the adhan of Sheikh Abu Anis, maybe somebody from the audience can bring us a dalil that shows that only black people can say that. Allahu A'lam.